Welcome to session 2. We'll look at conflict resolution. After going through session 2, you should be able to identify and describe the process of conflict resolution, explain what is meant by negotiation and compromise, and then you should be able to tell us how you even resolve conflicts in your day-to-day activities with other people. Now let's continue by looking at what conflict resolution is about. Conflict resolution is the process that occurs as you find solution to the various conflicts that comes in our relationship with other people. And normally it occurs in 5 stages, which we'll be looking at it. And before you are able to resolve a conflict, you need to be aware of the conflict. If you are not aware of the conflict, it will be very difficult for you to appreciate it and then work towards it. So you need to be aware of the conflict, and settling limits is the next. You need to argue about the whole conflict, and then you need to negotiate. Once you are able to do that, then you settle, and then you follow up to find out whether all that agreement that brought to the end is working or not, whether the conflict has really ended or not. So you do a follow-up. After going through session 2, you should be able to identify and describe the process of conflict resolution, explain what is meant by negotiation and compromise, and then you should be able to tell us how you even resolve conflicts in your day-to-day activities with other people. Now let's continue by looking at what conflict resolution is about. Conflict resolution is the process that occurs as you find solution to the various conflicts that comes in our relationship with other people. And normally it occurs in 5 stages, which we'll be looking at it. And before you are able to resolve a conflict, you need to be aware of the conflict. If you are not aware of the conflict, it will be very difficult for you to appreciate it and then work towards it. So you need to be aware of the conflict, and settling limits is the next. You need to argue about the whole conflict, and then you need to negotiate. Once you are able to do that, then you settle, and then you follow up to find out whether all that agreement that brought to the end is working or not, whether the conflict has really ended or not. So you do a follow-up. Now let's take the steps one after the other. Awareness. You need to be aware of the conflict. If you are not aware of the conflict, then what are you working towards, or what are you resolving? So definitely you need to be in the known of the conflict before you can make up your mind to work towards resolving it. And so whenever a conflict is brewing, you need to be in the known. So it talks about what? Recognition, as I mentioned. So you are able to recognize the conflict, you can work towards it. So in short, you need to identify the problem or the conflict. And then after you have been able to identify the problem or creating the awareness about the conflict, then you need to set a limit. In this stage of conflict resolution, you need to be argued. Points to be argued are established, and possible solutions are identified. So you need to set a limit. What are you going to argue about? What are the things that you are going to talk about That is the limit that you are setting. So you come out with, so you have identified the conflict. What is it? Disagreement, you not being in talking terms, probably not being able to meet regularly, and out of that you are not in talking terms. You have been able to identify that. And so what are the points that you are going to deal with in order to resolve it? So you come out with the limit. And in the point, how extensively do you want to discuss it? It all forms part of the limit you are setting. After you have these points, then you need to argue. During the arguing stage of conflict resolution, all the disagreements are brought to the surface. So talk about it. What are you disagreeing? What was the causes? What brought about the person not talking to you? What brought about the conflict? Every party needs to bring on board all the issues. You talk about it, whether you like it or whatever. Talk about the issue. And then the goal of arguing is to understand each other's position. So probably in a relationship, you want to talk about what brought about that. Why is the man not coming home early? It wasn't like that, and because of that there is a conflict. And so let each party point out, come out with all the issues so that you can negotiate to talk about it. To negotiate means you need to do what? Bargain. You negotiate to deal with the issue by bargaining. At this stage, you need to suggest what? Possible solutions. What are some of the things that we can do in order to resolve it? And during negotiation, sometimes there is a need for what? Compromise, so that we can resolve the issue to bring about a peaceful environment. After you have negotiated, then everybody has understood, has gotten the point. Everybody is aware of the issue that brought about the whole thing and is ready to let it go. The compromises are in. We have all understood what went wrong. We have recognized our shortcomings, and then we have agreed that we need to end the conflict in order to bring what? Peace. After you have agreed, you don't end it. You need to do what? A follow-up. And that is the final stage of conflict resolutions. Here we are saying solutions are put into action. And once it is being put in actions, you have to find out whether those solutions are working or not. And that becomes what? The follow-up. So during the negotiation, you have agreed on what you are going to do, the change in behavior to bring about peaceful environment. Find out whether it is actually happening. That becomes the follow-up. We should also note that resolution is possible at any stage of the process. And so any stage of the 5 processes that we've talked about, you can resolve it. However, resolving the conflict is easier if it is worked on at all the stages, and especially at the early stages, so that it doesn't travel far. You don't harbor a lot of things. So he said it is best if you are able to resolve it at the early stages. Patterns of adjustment to avoid conflict. We need to adjust. That is why I said compromises would have to come in. So what are the patterns of adjustment in order to avoid conflict? Remember, in any relationship, because we are coming from different environments, you don't, and then we are unique in our own way. Different personality comes to play. So definitely we will do things differently. And so what are some of the things that we need to do to adjust so that it shouldn't become only I want us to do it this way. This is what it should be done. This is what I want it to happen. No, there is a need for adjustment. And one pattern is what? Avoidance. And here we are talking about fear of conflict. One party decide not to say or do anything that will result in conflict. And so whatever you say, whether it's so annoying, once the other party has committed that I want the relationship to work, so whatever comes on board, I will not agree. No conflict will exist. So whether there is whatever or whatever, the person has accepted it and is okay with it. Insult the person will not insult you back. So the person has made it that I want to avoid conflict. Then focusing on the surface issue, that is not seeing the benefits of the conflict, keeping anger and complaints locked inside and building resentment towards family members. So here you are focusing on surface what? Issues. You are seeing that conflict comes with a lot of challenges. And so you don't want to see any benefit that comes with conflict, let alone to agree to whatever issue that is bringing the conflict. Then getting at the real issue. You need to clear issues. You can argue without hurting each other. Especially you can argue without actually affecting the person's what? Ego. And so you need to get the real issue and argue about it. How do we end a fight? So ending a fight is also one of the patterns. A fight ends when both parties have had their say and gotten out all the bitterness out of their system. So we sit down, we talk about the issue. At the end of the day, where we need to say sorry, we say sorry to each other, and then off we are gone. A fight can therefore be considered ended when the partners or parties have made up their mind. So till two parties or those involved decide to end the party, it will never come to an end. And this one is coming from an authority. To end, we are saying that conflict is inevitable in all close relationships. You can't have a close relationship without disagreements because we come in a unique ways. Some families have more conflict than others, and some are able to deal with conflict more constructively than others. How conflict is managed rather than how much conflict, there is very important in distinguishing satisfied versus dissatisfied families. So when we are able to resolve conflict, then the family becomes satisfied. But when there is always conflict and we are not able to resolve it, the family is always dissatisfied.